You've heard it your whole life. Back then, people died at 30. Picture an ancient human, gray and worn out, already old at 28, finished by 35. It is one of the most repeated facts about the past, and it is almost completely wrong. A person born 20,000 years ago could grow as old as you can, gray hair, grandchildren. A slow walk in the sun at 70. The number itself isn't a lie. For most of human history, average life expectancy really was around 30. But that single number hides something that flips the whole picture of the past upside down. So how long did ancient humans actually live? The trap is hiding inside one word: average. Imagine 10 babies born in a Stone Age camp. In a world with no antibiotics, no vaccines, no clean water on tap, several of them will not survive early childhood. Let's say 4 die before the age of 5. Now do the math on the whole group. Those 4 lives, counted as near zero, drag the average down with brutal force, even if the other 6 go on to live long, full lives. Average life expectancy at birth was never the age people died. It is a number wrecked by the death of the very young. And childhood really was a gauntlet. Before modern medicine, the first 5 years of life were a wall of danger. Infections, fevers, diarrhea, the kind of illnesses a single course of antibiotics would shrug off today. Roughly a quarter to a half of all children, depending on the place and time, never reached adulthood at all. But flip that around. If you made it past that wall, you had already proven something. You had survived everything your environment could throw at a small body. You had, in a sense, passed the hardest test of your life before you were 10. So the question we should be asking isn't how long people lived on average. It's a different question. If you made it through childhood, how long could you expect to live then? And here, the answer turns everything around. In 2007, 2 anthropologists, Michael Gervin and Hillard Kaplan, set out to measure exactly this. They pooled detailed records from hunter-gatherer and farming societies still living traditional lives, groups like the Hadza of Tanzania, the H of Paraguay, and the Jew Hoansi of the Kalahari. They published the results in the journal Population and Development Review. What they found should be on every history textbook's first page. Once a person survived to 15, they could expect to live into their 60s. And the most common age of death for adults, the age more people reached than any other, was about 72. 72. In a world with no doctors at all. This wasn't a lucky handful of elders. It was the normal shape of a human life across these societies. Old age is not a modern invention. It was always sitting there, on the far side of a dangerous childhood. And here's how unusual that makes us. Our closest relatives, chimpanzees, rarely live past 50, even in the safety of a zoo, with vets and regular meals. A wild chimp is old at 40. Yet a Stone Age human with nothing but stone tools and a fire could routinely outlive a pampered modern chimpanzee. Something about being human stretched our lifespan far beyond our ape cousins, long before civilization existed, but that's only hunter-gatherers. What about the deeper past, the great ancient civilizations? Same story. In ancient Rome, life expectancy at birth sat somewhere in the 20s, again crushed by infant mortality. Yet Roman writers grew old, senators served into their 70s, and emperors died of old age in their 80s. The gray-haired elder was a normal sight in the forum. The number said 30. The streets said otherwise. And there's a second reason we got this so wrong, one buried in the bones themselves. When archaeologists dig up an ancient skeleton, they estimate its age from wear on the teeth and joints. But past a certain point, an old skeleton just looks old, and the methods can't tell 70 from 50. So for decades, researchers quietly aged their oldest skeletons downward, and the elderly slipped out of the data. The old people were always there. We just couldn't see them in the bones, and sometimes the bones speak clearly. In a cave in France, archaeologists found a Neanderthal man who has been called the Old Man of La Chapelle. By the time he died, he had lost most of his teeth, his spine was bent with arthritis, and his joints were worn raw. He could not have chewed tough food or hunted, and yet he lived on like that for years. Someone fed him, someone cared for him. A group of so-called primitive people kept their elder alive long after he could give them anything in return. The old were not just present in the ancient world, they were valued. But here's the part that's truly strange, and it goes deeper than statistics. Humans are one of a tiny handful of animals on Earth that live for decades after they stop being able to reproduce. Think about that. In most of nature, when an animal can no longer breed, its life is essentially over. Not us. A human woman can live 30, 40, 50 years past her last child. That long old age isn't an accident. It looks like something evolution actively built. Almost the only other animals that share this trait are a few whales, like orcas, whose pods are led by old, post-reproductive females who remember where to find food in the hardest years. Long-lived elders, it turns out, are rare and precious in nature. In the 1980s, anthropologist Kristen Hawkes was watching the Hadza in Tanzania when she noticed something. The hardest working people in the camp were not the young parents. They were the grandmothers, out digging tubers in the heat, hour after hour, feeding their grandchildren so the mothers could have more babies sooner. This became known as the grandmother hypothesis. The idea is that long-lived elders were so useful that the genes for a long life spread. Old age wasn't a burden the group tolerated. It was an advantage that helped the group survive. And it wasn't only about gathering food. In a world with no books, no writing, no way to store what you knew except inside a human head, an old person was a living library. The elder was the only one who remembered the drought 40 years ago and which valley still had water. The one who knew which plant healed and which one killed, which berries to never touch, where the herds went in a hard winter. When an old person died, an entire library burned down. A group with elders simply knew more, and knowing more meant living longer. We may be a species that succeeded partly because some of us got old. Which brings us to the strangest twist of all. We tend to picture the 70-year-old as a modern achievement, something we unlocked with medicine and clean living. But the 70-year-old was already there at the campfire, 20,000 years ago. Modern medicine did something real, but it is not what most people think. It did not hand us a brand new, longer human lifespan. The maximum has barely moved. What medicine did was let far more of us survive the dangerous early years and the diseases that once cut lives short, so that many more of us now reach the old age that was always possible. Look at the numbers. In 1900, life expectancy at birth in much of the world was still only around 40. Today it's past 70 or 80. That looks like we doubled the human lifespan in a century. We didn't. Almost all of that jump came from one thing: babies and children no longer dying in huge numbers. Save the young, and the average leaps, even though the old age waiting at the end has barely changed. We didn't extend the human life. We mostly stopped it from being cut short. So the next time you hear that ancient humans died at 30, picture the truth instead. Picture the gray-haired figure dozing in the afternoon sun, surrounded by grandchildren, as old as anyone you know. That person is not a modern miracle. That person is as ancient as our species itself. What changed across all those thousands of years was never how long a human being can live. It was only how many of us ever get the chance.